wait to woo until I'm good.
If I had $1 every time I heard that. Wait to woo.
Until I'm good.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Just great. You know why I'm great?
Why?
Because we released an extra episode this week.
Yes, we sure did.
Excuse me?
I know. Who are those content bitches that can drop YouTube exclusive content?
I know. So you got an IUD.
I sure did, and I told everyone about it.
Yes, I held your hand the whole time, so I also had
you also had some
involved. Experience.
Yes.
And we made an episode just about that, and you can only find it on our YouTube Honeydew podcast.
I know saying that I think we're funny, is cheap because you can't. What are you going to do with that?
Costs a lot of money to be this cheap.
But it was so funny. I rewatched it again too because 1, our cameras are fantastic. And 2, we're funny.
We are funny.
And informative. And if you've ever been curious about what it's like to get an IUD, have any questions. Also, drop any of your questions in our YouTube comments too.
Please.
We're trying to be a little bit more communicative via comments sections.
Absolutely. And this new sort of episode setup where we're going to be releasing exclusive content on YouTube is here to stay. Here to stay. So go ahead and let us know what you want on there. It's a little bit shorter, a little bit funkier, a little bit less put together because we're so put together in every other thing that we do. Yeah. So that's where we let loose.
Our boss doesn't watch those either. So we can really just cut corners.
Let it rip.
Let it fucking rip. And by boss, I mean my mommy.
I mean mama, mother, papa. But it is a really good episode, and I think it's really good to be informed and know what you're doing and know what your options are. We have done a lot of research on birth control, but I realize that not everybody has, and I just think it's good to get a first-person experience of what it's like to get a little metal fishhook shoved up your vagina.
I was there.
You were there.
Yep, I do. So head on over.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about. Oh, I have a little update though first before we jump into that.
Today's. Yeah.
It's not huge, but
he is.
But he is. No, that was a good one.
No.
No, he is. It's fine. The other night, my boyfriend and I bought lingerie together, and it just got here today.
Did you like it?
I really liked it. I wasn't totally sure the night that we picked it out, or I had him pick it out. It was stuff that I wouldn't necessarily pick for myself.
Yeah.
I think I showed you a few of the pieces. There's a black one that looks kind of leathery.
Yes.
And
did it come as leather?
It came as pleather. So there's that. But it has a bow in the back too that you tie around your waist.
Okay.
And it actually fits beautifully. Go
oh
Riri.
My God.
Shout out Savage Fenty. I'm not sponsored, but I should be. And yeah, I got a couple other things, but that was the one I was most nervous about because I don't know, I'm a little bit different shaped than I used to be. And so underwear just fits me differently, but it feels really good and sexy. So I'm excited.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. That's so fun. I've never done any lingerie shopping with my partner. I am somebody who likes to be very comfortable. So
no, I am too. Usually, I think this would be the first time I've worn lingerie.
You're the first and only time.
Yeah, with intentional lingerie that I let him decide on. But yeah, no, it feels really good. It's fun and cutesy, and it's not super strappy or cutouty. It's just cute and funky.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, you'll post pictures, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. A slide deck up on our IG.
A link to a slide deck, a Google slide deck, maybe?
And it'll download as a zip file.
Beautiful.
You have JPEGs, right?
Yes.
You can access a JPEG. Yeah. And so it'll just come out like that.
PNGs.
I
want no background.
Imagine a fucking map.
Just Emma stickers. And then we'll upload them to Instagram so that you can add them to your stories.
Emma stickers. Oh my God, that would be so funny.
Well, there you go.
Okay, fantastic. That's my only update. Now we can dive into other people.
That sounded so backhanded. I meant it. Congratulations. No, I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Yeah. Preach.
So we're talking about bad sex today. What to do when the sex is bad And really, what to do when the sex is bad when you like them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like you meet somebody who sucks, you have sex with them, and you're like,
Scared.
I want to keep having sex.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not a thing.
It's like you're dating someone or you're in a relationship with them, but like the sex just isn't it yet.
It's not there.
What the fuck do you do then? Is it you?
Yeah.
Is it them?
Exactly.
If you are the person in your head that you know is causing the fucking issue, been there.
I'll admit I'm the problem most of the time.
Admit it. Because honestly, the people that I'm with, I guess, have usually just been more confident in bed or have seemed more confident in bed than I have. So I can tell that they're like, just like, no, I want to have sex. And I'm like, but what are my hips doing?
Right.
What is this like little side saddle of fat doing while you're doing that to me? So I'm the one in my head and I slow things down.
Exactly. And then I make it weird and uncomfortable for everyone involved. What is bad sex? Like, what does that mean to you?
I hate the feeling of being off, but no one's fucking saying anything. So bad sex to me would be when we're so mismatched on like pattern, rhythm, and we just keep asking like, okay, yeah, what do you want? I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. What do you want? And like you're stuck in this like weird position where no one's fucking saying anything.
Right.
And you're naked. Like, and on top of that, my clit is out. Like, you know?
She's just swinging.
Swinging like a windsock in the breeze. And no one's touching her. And we're just like hanging out. That feeling is bad sex to me.
When you're hanging out, but they're inside you.
Yeah. Potentially.
Yeah.
Somehow. Yeah, exactly. What about you?
I would agree with that. And I would say like when I'm so uncomfortable or anxious or in my head that like I can't embrace the like mess or the mess ups or like the awkwardness and just let it go, I hold on to those things. I wasn't kidding when I say I'm the problem. Like, I really do think that I am mostly the problem when it comes to bad sex. And I don't mean that in a self-deprecating way. I mean that in just a like, there's some shit I want to work on. Because there are times when it could have been really pleasurable and it was bad because I made it bad.
Right.
I think I do that in a lot of areas of my life.
What do you mean?
Just like, you know, we've talked about this when you're just like frustrated and so you make things harder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I do that because I want others to suffer.
Yeah.
I'm mad. You will know. And I want you to hurt because I'm hurt.
I want you to feel bad.
It's literally,
I feel bad.
Yeah. It's that stupid fucking saying that like hurt people.
Yeah.
Which it's true though. I only say stupid because I saw it for the first time on like Tumblr. So that's why.
Photo bucket
with like those scene kid vibes in front of it. But yeah, it's true. When I'm hurt, I want to hurt.
Yeah. So I feel like I bring that energy into sex sometimes, which is unfortunate for my partner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's primarily when sex is bad. Like, I think the typical things that you think of about sex being bad, like, or what we've been socialized to think is bad sex, like not having an orgasm or like not getting fully wet, like those things don't bother me. As I've learned more about sex, it's like use lube and orgasm isn't the goal.
Right.
That's not to say I don't get frustrated when I don't orgasm.
I was gonna say, because we all have heard your story of like if you don't orgasm,
I get a little angry and hurt people.
And hurt people. Hurt people. Twist his wiener. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. If you would have asked me a couple of years ago, it would have been like exactly what you just said. God, I had the biggest swallow right there. I could not talk past it. But yeah, as I've learned more about my body and what I need, like, yeah, I need lube. And if I'm not orgasming, then like I'll just use a toy.
Exactly.
So,
or fucking communicate and say like, do this.
Right.
Please. Or not please. I don't know. Depends on the mood that I'm in.
Yes.
I just think bad sex is not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
I truly know that I am the issue.
I've discovered it. Like, I know the answer.
Yeah.
It's just not what I thought it was.
And it's me.
Who are we talking to?
We're talking to Kate Moyle. She is a psychosexual therapist with a gorgeous accent.
With a gorgeous accent. So you can listen to her for days.
And
she should be in a sleep story.
I know. So beautiful. So listen to this once to learn and then listen to it once to fall asleep. But then we're going to like interrupt it with our voices and our laughs.
Like our cackling.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm editing, our voices are in the red of sound level. And our guests are always in like this green, happy medium. And ours are like, wow. Yeah. So I'm sorry, but fuck it. You
It
keep
is what
coming
it
back.
is.
So
Yeah, we're going to talk through all the things like when sex is bad, what do you do? Do you leave? Do you try and fix it? Do you ignore it? Like, we'll walk through every scenario. And it's going to be good.
Gonna be good. It'll get better. I promise. So we'll see you on the other side.
So I am Kate Moyle. I'm a psychosexual and relationship therapist and host of the Sexual Wellness Sessions podcast. And basically my job is that I am a specialist talking psychotherapist for any issues, difficulties, challenges to do with sex and relationships. So the way I always describe it is the sign above the door says it's okay to talk about sex here.
I wish, I love that too. And I wish I had more resources when I was having a lot of trouble in sex to find someone to talk to when sex has problems, which is kind of what we wanted to jump into today. So in a scenario, this entire topic is going to be within the scenario that you are happy to be with this person. The sex you're having is consensual, but it's bad. So what about sex can be bad in a situation that you're having sex with someone you like?
I think the basic premise of sex being bad, if you want to describe it that way, is that you're not enjoying it and not feeling understood is probably for me the underlying theme of that. And I think that it sounds so unsexy when all of us as sex experts and therapists say it's all about communication, it's all about talking about sex, it's all about understanding each other, but really it is.
So the lack of understanding can then play into just about every single physical, emotional aspect of sex.
Well, none of us are mind readers. We can't read our partner's minds and they can't read our minds. So there is no way that they can know exactly what we want at exactly that moment and how we want it in terms of sex. And one of the things that I always think about and talk about in terms of sex is fluid. It's not always the same. Just because it worked one way last week shouldn't mean it works the same way this week. And without that flexibility and that ability to check in with each other, then we sometimes just carry on doing what we're doing without knowing actually if it's working. And that can lead into really tricky cycles for couples, particularly if you then throw in not wanting to disappoint each other, faking orgasms, not wanting to disrupt the relationship or the status quo. Everything can get really sticky.
That makes sense. And I feel like there's two kind of ways in my head that sex can be bad, of like, you're having it and you're like, this, like, I don't like what they're doing. Like, that doesn't feel good, or that's like not what I like. And so there's bad in that way. But then I also feel like there's bad of like, I don't understand why this isn't working. Like, it just feels slightly off. Maybe like the rhythm is slightly off and things like that. But I'm wondering if for both of those, you can give us some phrases to start those conversations with a partner that aren't necessarily going to be, or hopefully not triggering for them, or like accusatory, because I have an issue with being accusatory.
Or like a mood stopper either.
Yeah.
The mood stopper thing, I would say, don't talk about it when you are about to have or have just had sex. So put a different time aside, because what that can do is that can leave people, typically the receiving partner, feeling, okay, like, so what just happened here does that mean you didn't enjoy what we just did? Does that mean you're really worried about what we're about to do? Does that mean that last time it wasn't good? And I think that those things can be really tricky. So I always take that conversation out of the bedroom and frame it positively. And exactly like you just said, I don't feel like I like being accused of anything. It makes me feel defensive. Defensiveness is not going to help this conversation at all. And so framing it in terms of, I really love the sex we've been having, or I really love our relationship, I really love what we've been doing together, but is there something else we can try? Or do you know what, I used to really enjoy what we were doing, but actually I think I've changed a bit, or I think it's not working for me in the same way that it used to. And taking ownership of our side of it is a big part of that as well. But framing it as something that you do together rather than that it's you versus me. So how can we work on this together? What can we both do? Is there anything you want to try? So also putting it back onto your partner, but realizing that if you're the one starting the conversation, that you're probably a step ahead. And so if you don't get the reaction that you want from them, also checking that out with them and saying, what is it you heard me say there? Or I didn't want to upset you, or this isn't meant to hurt you. This is something I want us to be better at together. Or what is it? What's going on now? Because I think that's the thing, is if we get a bad reaction and then we just shut it down or we back off, it then just gets left in the air, and knowing how to resolve that is a part of it.
Right. I have the issue with, because I'm thinking about everything constantly, always. So if I'm bringing it up, I'm assuming that someone is thinking about everything constantly.
You've also
always.
thought about this for the last 72 hours nonstop and thought of every possible outcome.
Exactly. So that's also what I need to remember when having those conversations is, one, I'm probably already a step ahead.
Or 80.
Or
80
what?
steps ahead.
Or 80 steps ahead. And two, we're different in the ways that we've thought about sex for the last 2 years. And so I come into a conversation, I feel like, in a lot different position anyway. But also what I was thinking about is that taking it outside of the bedroom makes a lot of sense. But if you are feeling off in the middle of sex, is there any way to adjust during, or is that just kind of like starting a fire and that's never going to end well?
Specifically, if you like don't know what the solution is, right? Like if
it's
you
not like
feel
move left, it's
off,
like,
and you don't know how to fix it, but you want, like, you're not just supposed to suffer through it, I imagine.
But you could always frame it again in a positive way and say to your partner, there's something I'd really like us to try. Could we try this? Or things like putting your hand over your partner's hand and guiding them. So showing them what you like doesn't even necessarily need to be spoken. It can just be something that you try together, or saying, kind of turning it into like a sexy talk, or saying, I really want you to kiss me there, or I really want you to try this, or shall we try it? You can frame it in I think framing it in a let's do this together, coupled, if we're talking about kind of that there's two partners in this relationship way, is not pitching you against each other. It's not you versus me, or you're not doing a good enough job, because that is the thing that I think shuts most people down, is the idea that they're being criticized. And when it comes to sex, we then see that the context around that is so tightly tabooed, stigmatized, uncomfortable, shame ridden, that we don't have the tools to know how to get ourselves out of that. And so we feel it so much more. We're so much more sensitive to criticism in our sex lives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if you're unsure of what it is that you want them to do, is it good to just try anything at that point? Like you're feeling off, you're feeling like this isn't feeling good, but like, I don't really know what I need, but I need you to do differently. So should you just like kind of throw anything out there and hope that it makes it better?
I think lean into the things that do work for you. So whether it's, I really like you kind of kissing down my neck, I really like it when you give me oral sex, I really like it when we try that position, or it makes me feel way more comfortable when the lights are off, or whatever it is. Try and lean into what works for you, because also the more you get into the moment, and we're talking, thinking about things like mindful sex techniques here, the more you're going to experience that arousal, the more you're going to notice your own arousal, the more you're going to feel turned on, the more desire you're going to experience. And those are the things that make sex better. And that, I guess, is that, that as you guys started this conversation, that kind of counterpoint to bad sex is improved sex. And really that's about fun and pleasure.
Yeah. I really like what you're saying about making it like an us thing rather than a you thing, because I recently heard this thing, and it was just, I think it was a TikTok talking about if you are in an argument with your partner, treating it as if you were on the same team, like trying to, achieve a goal together, versus like different teams going against each other. And I think that that's really interesting and really helpful. And I want to get a little more into what you said about shame around being bad at sex, because I think that is what comes up a lot of the time if somebody were to receive criticism around sex, is like, well, there's so much shame around being bad at sex. And if you're bad at sex, like, fuck off, basically.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about like the idea of being bad at sex?
Something I quite often say is sex is an area of our lives that we are expected to be an expert and expect our partners to be an expert without good education, trial and error, the ability to ask questions. And it makes no sense that every other area of our lives we learn, we put an effort into, we try, we get it wrong, we get it right, we talk about it, we ask questions. It just makes no sense that sex is not treated the same way. And very much in my world as a sexologist and a psychosexual therapist, we think about sex as a skill, but the skill is not a formula that you follow and then you apply to every situation. It is something that's flexible and fluid and that you can use in all those different ways. And I think we have all these versions of sex that we see, and they're always good sex. There's rarely bad sex in films, on Netflix, in porn, like on our screens. We make assumptions about all these hot couples that we see on social media that they must be having great sex. You know, we only hear about the good sex because no one talks about the not good or bad sex. So the shame or the idea about being bad at sex is completely compounded by the fact that we know we're not meant to ever talk about it or say to someone, I'm really struggling with sex, or this isn't working, or, you know, something isn't happening here. What do I do about it? Because we feel like we don't have anywhere to turn.
Yeah. It's frustrating because I've had bad sex more than I've probably had good sex. But it's hard to open up about that because you don't know if it's going to be interpreted as like you're bad at sex or like the people, like it's kind of embarrassing to say like all you have is bad sex, you know, but it's like if we're not good at talking about it, not taught how to talk about it, how are you ever going to have good sex? I especially hated when I'd have bad sex with people that I really, really liked, or like it was like a one night stand that I'd been like waiting for all college for him to finally come over. And then he did. And it was the worst sex I've ever had. And I didn't really understand how you can like someone and have so much good chemistry and still have bad sex. That didn't compute in my head to me, but I guess that just wraps back around to communication.
Yeah, and I think it's about how we all learn about sex, isn't it? It's that if we all learn one version of sex, which typically is PIV, so penis and vagina. So we have this typical order of sex that we get taught. Foreplay, so clues in the name, it happens before the main event, and then intercourse. Now, a lot of people don't even have the foreplay bit as a part of the plan. So it's straight to intercourse, which is not the best way to guarantee for sex to be not bad. And it's that I think it all goes back to this idea of then if we have our formula, or we think we have, or we think we've been taught that's sex, so that's what I've got to do, and we just then apply that to all the different situations, and nobody corrects us or no one says anything because none of us have the tools to know how to talk about it, so we just carry on doing it, and no one has said it's bad, no one might have said it's good, but we then just get, I think, stuck in this thing until we meet someone who we change it with, or who says, actually, do you know what, shall we do this differently? And I think that there is that we're all taught to not speak up or to not say, do you know what, actually this isn't working for me, can we try something different? And it's really that simple sometimes.
Yeah.
But none of us are empowered or told that we can say that.
Right. And I definitely didn't have the words back then either to be like, this is not fun. We should change this. And to your point, I never said anything at any point ever to him that I wasn't having a good time. We like literally just never talked again. So I guess it does make sense that the pattern will continue until someone either helps course correct or that's basically it. Someone helps you course correct.
Or self-educate, we change something that we do, we see a different version of sex. I think it's now we're kind of opening up the perspective of sex a lot. There's been massive changes. I mean, the iPhone changed everything, really, the smartphone, whatever it is, 12, 13 years old. And I think that sex is now is just about becoming a mainstream topic. We're having conversations like this. We've got hundreds of sex podcasts, amazing like sex educators, programs on Netflix like The Principles of Pleasure. All of these things are putting it where it needs to be, but we're all still playing catch up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not totally sure how to ask this question other than like, what if you feel like you are the reason that you're having bad sex? You know what I mean? Like, what if you feel like, oh, I am bad at sex, and not in a shameful way, but in a like, oh, I'm really stiff, or I'm really nervous, or I'm bad at like taking criticism. Like, how do you start to work through that? Because like I struggle to take criticism. So I guess in some ways I would be bad at sex.
Great question. Because I also feel like I'm really bad at stamina. Like when it could be good, I'm just like, I'm tired and I'm done. And then I feel like the issue. That's a great question.
Yeah. So what can you do? What do you say? How do you process that?
I think it's all about sex education, and that can happen at any point in our lives, whether we are 18 or 80, like there's no time limit on it. And I think for me, a lot of that doesn't even have to happen, inverted commas, in the bedroom. It's about thinking about sex differently, starting to talk about it more, exploring our own bodies. I think if we don't know what we like ourselves, how can we show a partner what we like? How can we be really confident? And if we are distracted by the fact that we don't know what we're enjoying or what we're meant to enjoy or what we feel we want to enjoy, we're not going to then be experiencing pleasure, because we're going to be distracted by our thoughts thinking, do I like that? I'm not sure. Does it feel good? I think so, maybe. Is it meant to feel like that? All of those questions are like those intrusive thoughts that are going through our head. And getting to know ourselves better, then we can kind of better identify like what works and what doesn't work for us, and feel more confident, I think, with a partner as well. But there's amazing like sexual wellness apps nowadays. There's an amazing app called Furly, which is particularly aimed at women, which is all about getting to know your body, identifying what works for you, what doesn't, how you feel about yourself, body confidence. And I think that really being like, okay, I want to make the changes to my sex life. I'm going to do this for me. And again, not doing it for someone else so that it's performative, but doing it genuinely for yourself is something that anyone can do at any point, even if it is just listening to a podcast, reading a book, masturbating, having like a really sensual shower, whatever it is. It's that you feeling more sexually confident is a big game changer.
Right.
Do you have any specific words of wisdom for when you do receive critique, or if somebody says straight up, like, I didn't like having sex with you, or the sex with you was bad? I've never directly been told that. I imagine that's said though. Or, say like, I did not like what we did, because I know, if I take a step back, or if I were to say something like that, I'm like, oh, it doesn't have anything to do with like your worth as a person. But if somebody says it to me, I'm like, oh, I'm trash. So what would you say to somebody in that situation?
I'd say focus it on the act or the behavior or what it was. Don't personalize it. Or also just say, oh, what was it that you didn't like? Or what would you have preferred that we do? Or what can we try next time? So as you said, it's that it's so hard to not take it personally. I think there's very little in life, apart from maybe people talking about our parenting, that we take as personally as people talking to us about us having sex. And we have to then, if we also treat it as every time we have sex with a different person, it's kind of trial and error in lots of ways. We don't like everyone we meet. We don't become friends with everyone we meet. Don't like everyone we work with. We don't like all our family members. That whole interperson thing, person to person, isn't always going to work perfectly, but we have examples of that in every other area of our life apart from sex. But if we want to improve sex with that person, it's then thinking, okay, what can we do or try differently that we might like? or what can we work out that's kind of in the in-between for both of us. But I think that the thing I would say is that taking it so personally is almost impossible not to some element. So you can always acknowledge that and say, that actually really hurt a bit, but let's try and think, or what we're going to do differently next time, or what we're going to try next time. What do you reckon? Or how do you suggest we do that? Or what shall we try?
Right. This part is coming from someone who absolutely does not practice what I'm preaching. But Franny, remember we had her on and she was talking about rejection and how like she never takes rejection personally because it's not about her, it's about their preference. And I try to remember that a lot because that's such a great point. Like when someone's saying I don't like something, it's not that you're doing it, it's that they personally do not enjoy what is happening. I guess
it's from them.
It's from them.
You.
Yeah, exactly. But all of that still goes back to you can't just take this pattern and this like performance that you've done with every single person and apply it to every single person because people aren't going to enjoy that all the time. So it makes sense that feedback would be natural because you're not the same person as the person they had sex with before.
Yeah. But it's also that doing it together thing. You're both doing it. So you're both in it. You're both there. So I think it's also about how we're taught to talk about these things. So it might be, especially if someone is like, well, I never have a problem normally, so the problem must be you. We like to position blame on the other person, whereas actually that didn't work when we did that, or that didn't work for us, or together that wasn't that good, or wasn't that enjoyable, or wasn't that fun. It's working out how the two of you don't repeat that. And that's a two-person or however many people there are in the relationship or sexual experience thing.
Is there ever a point at which like the sex is just bad and you guys aren't compatible? Like how do you know it's that versus, oh, we just have some stuff to work on?
I get asked this all the time, and to be honest, I don't think I actually know the answer. And I think it's because I like to think that if both parties want to change it, then the ability to change it is there. But I think both people have to be in it. One of you cannot change everything for both of you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in relationships. If one person is like, I really want this to work, but the other person isn't putting in as well, then you're going to struggle. And when it comes to our sex lives, there's loads that we can do. We can learn about sex. We can try different things together. We can introduce things we haven't tried before. We can mix things up. We can go to massage classes. I mean, honestly, the options are almost unlimited. But I think the openness to try has to be there from both parties.
I like that answer.
I was going to say, I love that answer though. Like that just gives you hope that it's not always, you'll have to work through it probably, but if you're both willing to try, then I mean, that it's endless. The possibilities are endless. What you could do.
Another question I had in relation to that is I think we base our feelings about people and, how we deem like the quality of our relationship in the beginning based on like a lot of it is sex. You know what I mean? And it's like, does the sex have to be good for it to be a viable relationship? Does that make sense? I'm not sure.
So you mean if you're dating someone and the sex is bad or you're not enjoying the sex, should you carry on? Or has it got legs?
Be really like fucking amazing right from the beginning, or can it get better and that's just as good?
I think it can definitely get better. I think it's that point that we started on, which is that we can learn about each other. And I think one of the groups that actually reports like the most satisfying sex are couples that have been together for a while, because they get to know each other, they know what works for each other, they get comfortable, confident. And that I think we some people say, oh my god, the sexual connection was just amazing at the start, and it's just got better. And for other people it might feel like a slower start, but that doesn't mean that it's not going anywhere. And I think it is that learning about each other preferences again. A lot of us don't have the confidence at the start of a relationship to say, actually, these are my sexual preferences, or this is what I like to do, or this is what feels good for me. But it's something that can kind of get tried out or blended in the longer that they're with someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just started dating someone, and like I feel like we've had pretty good, consistent, like good sex. But like the first time did feel a little like off. Obviously, there's a new human being inside of me. And I remember talking to my sister, and she's like, yeah, that's just kind of how it is. Like the best times are like your seventh and eighth time when you're more comfortable. You're probably a few more weeks in or whatever. And it's just true. I feel like I'm a little bit more comfortable with it starting out rocky now that we're in this position of this being in life. But yeah, I would feel like I was the failure if like in the beginning years ago, sex was off or bad or whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, it's all about confidence. I feel like of like getting more comfortable with someone.
I think so many of us at the start as well, or the first few times we're having sex with someone, we're so preoccupied with our own performance that we actually don't enjoy sex a lot of the time, because we are so, a massive part of the work that I do is helping people to get in their bodies and out of their heads, because they're so distracted by their thoughts or their anxieties or life. And what that does is it essentially turns down the volume on you experiencing the physical sensations of sex, and then you start to enjoy it less, or you don't reach orgasm as much, or you aren't as tuned into your arousal. And so when we are first with someone sexually, quite often we can be completely preoccupied by thinking about what they think about us and how are we doing, what do they think, are they having a good time, do they fancy me, what do they think of me with my clothes off, all of this stuff tends to be going through our heads. And the more we're with someone, the more that we trust that those things don't need to be such a worry. And I think then what we can do is start to feel more, and then we start to enjoy sex more.
Yeah. Never underestimate turning all the lights off and having sex in the pitch black in the beginning of a relationship, because that is the money shot for
a game changer.
A game changer.
All of this is making me think about like how we really do need to reframe the narrative around sex and the beginning of relationships, and how I feel like we tend to think about sex as like a checkbox, like, oh, in order for this to move forward, the sex has to be good. Like, oh yeah, sex is great with them. Great, we can move forward. If it's not great, oh, like they must not be for me. And instead reframe the beginning of the relationship and like sex in the beginning as I'm getting to know this person.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so different than, is sex going to be good with this person? Can I continue dating them? Versus I want to get to know this person on all of these levels, just like you would in any other aspect of their life. You don't expect them to know all of your favorite things right away. So why would you expect them to know all of your favorite things in the bedroom?
Well, I think that wraps right back around to educating yourself about sex and being expected to be good the second you are of age, but no one tells you it's okay to learn about sex and learn about sex just by yourself when you're having sex with yourself. It's like, that's when you learn the most, like you were saying earlier about like a sensual shower or like masturbation and exploring. It's like all of those steps have to happen for you to even begin how to have good sex with, like, know how to have good sex with yourself. And then you have to do all of that with another person to know how to have good sex with someone else.
I think it was all, I absolutely loved it, but things like Sex in the City, when we used to all watch like all the box sets from 1 to however many there ended up being, it was all divided up. It was like good sex, bad sex, like, as you said, checkbox exercise, and it was like categorization of partners based on sex. And I think if we can be a bit more open-minded about it and just see that sex is something that happens, it's kind of co-created between people at that time in that context. Couples who are in 10-year-long relationships can have different sex every time they have sex. It can have a different function every time, a different meaning every time. Sometimes it might be really slow and sensual, sometimes it might be a quickie, sometimes it might be just because they look hot, because they want an orgasm. One of my favorite studies was done in 2007 by some authors called Buss and Meston, and they identified 237 reasons for why people said they had sex. And I just love that, because I think one of my favorites actually was because they wanted to keep warm. And but I just think that it just so I think we just assume, we have this really static view of sex, and we assume then that all of us are having sex the same way all the time, that it should be the same way every time, and then when it isn't, that change must be a problem. And it just doesn't have to be. I think that it's our thinking actually about sex that hasn't quite caught up.
Right. That's actually a really fun, like an interesting point too, is like all the different reasons that you could be having sex in a moment can change how you're having sex in a moment. I love that.
Yeah, if I'm trying to stay warm, it's going to be different.
Stay warm, exactly.
Something that popped into my head, and then I kind of walked myself through it, was I was like, well, why do some people have really amazing sex right away? Or why are some people really good at sex? And it's like, probably because they learned and listened and explored and were open. Like, are some people just born really good at sex?
I have no idea.
Like, I feel like that doesn't make it. Well, I don't know. People are born really good at like running. I don't know. I'm not one of them.
Bodies are just different.
Yeah. I don't know.
I was born bad at running.
Like, are people born for certain things?
Same. I'm very bad at running. Running for the bus nearly kills me. I think of it, I said I don't know, but I think it is a skill. And I think we all know instinctively that that's not true at all. I think we get taught the mechanics of how to do sex, but that is such a basic model, and it's put X in Y. That's it. That ignores such a massive part of sex. But I think that we can develop this sexual sense of self. Now, for some people, maybe it's something that they develop younger or earlier or on their own, or they feel more confident about, or they're just someone who feels really comfortable being in that intimate situation with someone else. And so they feel that they can just work it out as it goes, and they don't worry about it so much. Whereas some people, that might be absolutely terrifying. And I think there's just so many factors. But also, is it just, right person, right time, right date, right context, and it works from the one off, but actually we don't have any idea of what it was like with the last person that they slept with.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And just because you have one really good one night stand doesn't mean if you met that same person again next week on a Tuesday when you're super stressed, that it would feel just as amazing as it did last week when you weren't stressed or whatever.
Exactly. I feel like I'm having fine sex right now, but I also feel like I've never been with a partner that has asked me so much, like during sex, which does, I will say, have its like pros and cons, because sometimes it feels great to ask like what I need. And sometimes I'm like, just do it. Just stop asking me questions and do it. But I also feel like that does contribute to when they feel confident enough to ask, what do you need? Or is this okay? That's also how we've talked about how like checking in is like an attractive thing to do. So I also think that can contribute to being better initially if you have the confidence to ask if this is okay. I don't know. You mentioned like reasons for having sex, and you're like, maybe because you just want a quickie. And one of my questions is, what if you want quicker sex, and how do you ask for that? Because I'll say that sometimes, I mentioned stamina, I'm bad at having stamina, and I would like for just a quickie, but I also don't want to cut like their pleasure short. But it does become not as fun sex for me if it goes on for too long. So how do we say, like, speed it up?
How do you say it nice?
How do you say it nicely?
I mean, you can always say things to your partner like, I really enjoy it when we have quicker sex, or you can try and kind of speed up the rhythm or change position so that it works for you if you don't feel like you've got a lot of stamina, so a position where you're less active. But I think this I think happens for women more, as particularly we see that sometimes women who find that sex can be a bit painful sometimes would prefer sex to be shorter or if they're struggling with lubrication, because then it can feel like things kind of get a bit dry or a bit uncomfortable. So I think it's just sometimes about either trying to speed things up to move it towards the end, or actually saying, can we try something else? Or could I focus on you for a bit? Or can we change this up? Or, trying to introduce different elements, because I think that is actually one of the things that feels harder for people to ask a lot of the time, because as you said, you're being conscious of your partner's pleasure and you don't want to cut that short. But that's where perhaps changing what you're doing can also put the emphasis on something else, or take the emphasis off you if that's where you feel it is.
Yeah. Because sometimes they're like, no, it feels so good, I want to keep going. And I'm like, oh, how can I ruin this for you then? How can I cut this short?
How can I make this bad?
How can I make you a little uncomfortable so that we stop?
Is that a fair question? If you're ready to be done, are there surefire ways to make sex bad?
Maybe that's a question. I think we can name a few.
Yeah. I was like, maybe mess up the rhythm a little bit.
Yeah. Just like, oh,
lay there.
No, this is great for me.
Yeah.
Just slug it.
So something must be wrong with you.
Gaslighting.
Yeah.
That's great.
Is that gaslighting?
Oh my goodness. I feel like that was my last question that I had in my head, was that sometimes I want quicker sex. So thank you for that response.
Yeah. Is there anything we didn't cover in terms of bad sex or, improving sex that you think people need to hear?
I think, just for me, we are taught one version of sex, which is intercourse. And it's such a tunnel vision, limited view of sex. I mean, female pleasure hardly comes into it, rarely comes into it. And opening up your perspective about sex doesn't have to be scary or intimidating or anxiety provoking. So I think the phrase, spice it up or mix it up, sometimes just fills people with the fear of, they're just like, what am I going to have to do? What am I going to have to buy? Who am I going to have to dress as? What exercise am I going to have to try? This is just not my vibe at all. And I think that we can just start to open up our perspectives about sex, whether it's listening to experts talking about it, reading a book about it, trying an app, anything like self-mastery, all the stuff we talked about earlier. You can just start to expand your sexual view a bit. And that can be done by anyone, anytime, in any place. You could literally be sitting on the bus listening to a podcast. It's not, you don't have to feel under pressure to do anything really sexual to change your sex life. And even just saying, and often with couples, people say to me, how do we start the conversation? If it's something like that, send your partner the podcast episode and say, listen to this today. Why don't you have a listen and we can talk about it? Why don't you let me know what you think? Or suggesting something. So I always talk about an L shape, so it doesn't feel like it's coming from you, you're suggesting it via someone else, and that can take the pressure off a bit. So I think that's what I'd say to people is don't feel like you need to be afraid of it, because I think so many people think, okay, I've got to do something differently. So, and the anxiety and the fear about that means they'd rather just avoid it and stick to the status quo, whereas actually you don't have to completely throw yourself into doing everything differently. You can just change one thing every time, or kind of baby step by baby step, try little things differently.
That's a great tip, because I know that spicing it up can sound a little intimidating. So I love that.
Where can our listeners continue connecting with you after this episode?
My podcast is the Sexual Wellness Sessions, and that's each episode is an in-depth dive into a particular topic. So we've done stress and sex with Emily Nagoski, desire with Dr. Karen Gurney, everything from erectile dysfunction to infertility to motherhood to sexual mindset, mindful sex. I think that they, for me, are the conversations I was having so much in the therapy room that I wanted to take them out, because I was like, I think if more people were having them outside, then less people would end up in the therapy room. So it's a kind of reverse process. And then my Instagram is at Kate Moyle Therapy.
See, Kate will bring you comfort. It will get better.
Comfort.
Wait. That's not really how I meant it.
I didn't mean that.
Don't come in far. I mean, you can. You're relaxed. Your body's moving.
That's your business.
That's your business. It's not my business. If I came and farted at the same time at this moment in my life,
The ecstasy I would feel.
the absolute ecstasy I would feel. No, I think I would pass away. Yeah. Or dig a hole and lay in it for a long, long
But like
time.
2 years from now, you're with the same person. Do you think you'd care?
No.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks into a relationship, I'd care.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
What if he did it?
I would care. And if you're listening, don't.
Don't. Remember when Jurgen and I were having shower sex and he farted on the edge of the shower?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do. If you haven't listened
Your
to
beloved.
Our beloved, my beloved, yeah, our beloved. If you haven't listened to our shower sex episode,
Oh
there's
my
a little
God. There's
PSA
a
to
little
run back
teaser.
to it. When you fart on a hard, wet surface,
the wet reverberation you've created with your butt cheeks.
it's not silent but deadly. That is quite opposite.
Oh my God. Fuck, that was funny. Cycling back, thank you so much, Kate,
Yes,
for being on the
thank you.
episode today. And thank you to you, Honey Bucket, for being here for another week.
Our favorite little honey bucket.
Mhm.
If we are your favorite honey buckets, head on over to Apple Podcasts to rate, review, and subscribe to Honeydew Me Podcast. You can also
You're going to hate that later. Like I already know. But I'm so happy you sang it. Keep going.
Well, now I'm insecure.
And hurt people, hurt people.
Hurt people, hurt people.
The rest of this podcast is just you because now I'm dead.
Anyways, you can also rate us on Spotify. Only kind ratings will go through.
I don't know what
so
that
keep
is,
that in mind.
But it's like a kink they haven't figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And share this episode with somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it might seem a little offensive to share this one in particular, but also
But
that's called communication.
Yeah.
And again, it's not something to be ashamed of if you are bad at sex.
yeah, because
I am bad at sex. And I'm not ashamed.
join the club, the Bad Sex Club. Cass has stickers. It's my nudes.
I'm bad at sex. And then Emma, nude.
Nude. What can I say? It gets people's attention.
It's called merch. It's called creative
Yeah.
merchandise.
Look and listen, bitch.
Oh, fuck.
Okay. Well, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.